Today, Bitcoin rises after delayed jobs numbers show payrolls rose by 64,000 in November after falling the month before. Gemini prediction markets are now live in the United States. And Cuy Sheffield, the head of crypto at Visa, discusses the payments giant's launch of stablecoin settlement in the U.S. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Talia Kaplan. Crypto markets are mixed after the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported a 4.6% rise in unemployment last month, which was more than expected and the highest level since September 2021. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin rose more than 1% to the $87,000 level after falling to the $86,000 level 24 hours before. Ether slid nearly 2% and XRP gained around 1%. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. Gemini prediction markets are now live in the U.S. Last week, we told you the company received CFTC approval to enter the space, and yesterday the product went live under affiliate Gemini Titan. Now, this comes as more crypto firms look to prediction markets as another revenue stream outside of spot trading and other typical offerings. A source told CNBC Coinbase is also getting ready to launch a prediction market powered by Kalshi. Around midday, Gemini shares rose more than 4%. Next, we're learning key crypto legislation just got pushed to next year. Crypto market structure legislation is expected to be marked up in early 2026. That's according to the Senate Banking Committee, with a spokesperson saying Committee Chair Tim Scott and the committee have made strong progress with Democrats on bipartisan digital asset market structure legislation. The industry, lawmakers, and many Crypto World guests throughout the year were hopeful a market structure bill would become law in 2025 to go along with the Genius Act Stablecoin Act, which President Trump signed into law over the summer. Of course, this follows the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history that took place in the fall. Last, Custodia Bank is urging a federal appeals court to weigh in on its push to get a master account from the Federal Reserve. As a quick refresher, for years, the crypto-focused bank asked to obtain one of these master accounts, which gives financial institutions access to Federal Reserve payment platforms. Now, back in 2023, the Fed Bank of Kansas City denied Custodia's request over risks tied to crypto, which in turn led to a lawsuit. In 2024, a district court sided with the Fed, saying the central bank is not required by law to grant a master account to Custodia. Custodia then appealed, and a panel of 3 judges handed down a mixed ruling that once again sided with the central bank. Now, Custodia is trying again, this time petitioning the full appeals court. Lawyers for the bank argued to the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals that the previous ruling gives the Fed Bank of Kansas City absolute power over which banks live or die. The petition also argues that the panel of judges disregarded the Monetary Control Act, which delegates which services the Fed offers to non-members. All right, for our main story, Visa announced today that it's teaming up with 2 banks to expand its stablecoin settlement pilots into the U.S. market. I spoke with Cuy Sheffield, head of crypto at Visa, about this announcement and what happens next. Today, Visa announced the debut of stablecoin settlement in the U.S. Now, for the first time, U.S. issuer and acquirer partners can settle with Visa in Circle's USDC, and it all goes live this week. I want to start off by asking why it was important for Visa to expand its stablecoin settlement pilots into the U.S., specifically now. I'm sure regulatory advancements like the Genius Act becoming law here in the U.S. over the summer had something to do with it.
For sure. So Visa's really become the network of choice for stablecoin linked cards. And one of the reasons for that is we've been directly using stablecoins to improve how money moves across our network. We've been doing it outside the United States, in Africa, in Asia, and Latin America. But now that you have regulatory clarity, with the Genius Act, we've been really excited to see clients, including 2 of the most innovative partner banks in Lead Bank and Cross River, now looking to work with us, to use stablecoins to settle transactions with Visa in the United States. And we think that's a really big deal, having banks, interacting on chain with Visa here in the United States.
Now, I understand right now this is a stablecoin settlement pilot, but how long can we expect it to be a pilot and what happens next?
Yeah, so we've announced that we've done about, we're on a $3.5 billion annualized run rate. And so there's real volume moving through our network using blockchains and stablecoins. We have a number of partners that are doing this, and we're seeing more and more demand. And so right now we're really focused on how can we continue to expand these capabilities adding more stablecoins, more blockchains, working with issuers and acquirers. And we expect that over time, there'll be more transactions on our network that can natively settle in a stablecoin end to end.
Now, as you mentioned, initial banking participants include Cross River Bank and Lead Bank, who started settling with Visa in USDC over the Solana blockchain. Broader availability in the US is expected throughout next year. Why did Visa decide to partner with these specific banks, and how will this all work?
Yeah, so the way to think about it is that Lead Bank and Cross River are really important partner banks in our ecosystem. And so we have a growing number of fintech, digital wallets, stablecoin wallets that are looking to issue card programs. They want to be able to bring to market a stablecoin linked card, but they need to work with a bank in the United States to do that. And so where Lead and Cross River have really leaned in is specializing in being that fintech stablecoin wallet ready partner bank that could help issue these programs. Now, if you're operating a stablecoin linked card, we'd argue it's only really a stablecoin linked card if the stablecoin is moving end to end throughout the network. And so it makes a lot more sense for the stablecoin wallet to be able to settle with Lead in USDC and for Lead to send that USDC directly to Visa instead of having to always convert back into fiat. And so we see this as fundamentally a new stablecoin native card program, and Lead and Cross River are important partner banks that help enable it for the end wallets.
So who is this specifically designed for? Who's the ideal candidate?
Yeah, so you can think about stablecoin wallets that are enabling end customer value propositions where a consumer would hold, send, and receive a stablecoin. We think the infrastructure of building on top of a stablecoin is very valuable, but the challenge is there's not a lot of acceptance. If you hold a stablecoin today in a wallet and you want to spend it at a merchant, there are very few merchants out there who are directly accepting. And so we think that's where, by issuing a card, being able to put a Visa credential inside of a stablecoin wallet, you can then spend from a stablecoin balance at 150 million merchants accept Visa. But to issue the card, you need partner banks, like Lead, like Cross River, that can help directly connect to Visa, to enable these card programs to come online.
Now, you touched on this, but can you take us through Visa's history with stablecoin settlement, which I understand goes back to 2021? Also, before launching in the US, global settlement pilots were rolled out in other markets, like you mentioned, including Europe. So take us through that journey, which ultimately led Visa to expand its stablecoin settlement pilots into the US market.
Yeah, so we've been in this space for a long time. We set up the full-time crypto team in 2019. It was the depths of the bear market, and we've really made progress every single week. And so we started experimenting with USDC in 2021. It was very clear to us that there was something unique about stablecoins, the property of being able to transfer them 24/7 across the world. And if you think about the way that settlement typically works, is you can't settle 7 days a week. Traditional settlement networks like Fedwire and Swift, they don't work all the time. They take bank holidays. And so what we found is that blockchains could be this very effective settlement layer. But when you're operating inside a system at the scale of Visa, we have to do things very carefully and meticulously. And so we started very slowly. We did some initial tests in 2021. We rolled out the first ongoing pilots in 2023. We were doing it outside the United States in markets where there was more regulatory clarity. And then as we got more experience, as we've seen the demand, we're now ready to scale this a lot more and be able to bring it to markets like the US, where we're seeing banks that are ready to participate and interact with these capabilities.
Last month, I sat down with your colleague, Mark Nelson, here in studio. He's the head of product at Visa Commercial Money Solutions, and he explained a new pilot allowing businesses and platforms to send payouts directly to the stablecoin wallets of recipients, including creators and freelancers. Now that it has been a few weeks since that pilot launched, how is it going so far? Do you have any insight there?
Yeah, so the way to think about it is that we see opportunities to integrate stablecoins into many products that Visa has that we think can accelerate the way that we move money. And so we started with stablecoin settlement, which is issuers who are bringing card programs to market being able to send money to Visa in a stablecoin, or Visa sending money to acquirers. What Mark talked about is we have an entire money movement business for remittances, for B2C payouts to creators. And so we're taking some of the same infrastructure, the same experience that we've had doing stablecoin settlement for purchase transactions, and applying that to doing payouts to creators, doing payouts to freelancers. So it's still very early, but we're excited to get these capabilities online, and we're seeing more demand from our clients to be able to have a single partner like Visa that can help them navigate fiat payments and stablecoin payments under one unified platform.
So what else can people here in the US expect in 2026 from Visa as it relates to stablecoins and crypto more generally?
Yeah, I think we're really excited to see the continued demand and institutional adoption with many of our bank partners. And so one of the things that we've been doing is we've been very focused on how can Visa build infrastructure and capabilities that can help bring banks on chain. We've announced that we've built some capabilities around stablecoin issuance with a product called VTAP that we're working with BBVA in Europe, and we're going to continue to enhance the infrastructure that we provide, making it as easy as possible for banks to come interact in the space. And we think stablecoin settlement is just one example around how banks will start to use stablecoins in conjunction with Visa.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.